ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Dying time is here. That's right. We're talking A Nightmare on Elm Street Beginnings on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from the new release aisle of the video store. This is Kill by Kill, the show dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. We're going to unpack all the gory details of how we first watched A Nightmare on Elm Street in the hopes that a kid who got the shit scared out of them by watching this crazy fucking movie, hopefully their souls end. It's just the beginning of the jokes that we can make about ourselves. And as always, there's only one person I trust to accurately tell me whether or not Freddy slices open his head or slices off his finger. The one and only Gena Radcliffe. How you doing, Gena?
I'm good. I feel like it's both, but I could be.
Is both. It's both in different movies, but it was described to me by the one kid in my English class as both occurring in the same movie.
Yeah, no, the fingers are in the first one. Screw that kid. He didn't know what he was talking about.
Well, we'll get into it, whether he knew what he was talking about or not. This is a bit of a prequel episode here, coming to you in between our normal weeks, because the one thing that we did with one another when we started Friday the 13th was we asked each other where was the first moment where we encountered the franchise. And we could do that in our first episode because the first two kills of Friday the 13th happened in the first 5 minutes. They dry hump for a little while after listening to folk music as lubricant, and then are summarily killed.
Because who among us wouldn't?
Well, I mean, listen. Riding that boat ashore is code word for penis, I think. I don't know. I don't get folk music. I was born too late. So we're going to, because the Nightmare on Elm Street series operates much differently, it has a much lower body count. We're going to have the episodes are going to encompass a lot larger sections of the movie. And so we thought it might be beneficial for everyone to hear about our own reminiscences of A Nightmare on Elm Street pre our first guest coming on in our first episode. And so Gena, as my trusted co-host, as the person that I listen to about this particular brand of nonsense more than anyone else on earth, where did you first encounter the Nightmare on Elm Street series?
I actually have a pretty clear memory of watching it late at night on cable. So this would have been 85-ish. Mm-hmm. So I would have been about 13. Not to be a giant bummer, but at the time, my parents were in an extremely acrimonious divorce, and I was left to my own devices much of the time, which is why I'm now a 46-year-old woman who enjoys a very large collection of pop dolls. It explains so much. Anyway, so I kind of pretty much had free range of, the cable, and I watched whatever I wanted, and what I wanted to watch much of the time were horror movies. I mean, obviously this wasn't like some, gem that I discovered that and no one had ever heard about. I mean, I was aware of the movie's existence, but I did not have my own VCR at home yet. I went at my grandparents' house, so I mostly relied on what was coming on cable. And unlike today, in which movies that come out in theaters are on cable about maybe a month later or so, it would take anywhere from a minimum of a year or so before a movie would go from theatrical release to cable release. So I just kind of thought, oh, cool, I've been wanting to see this, and by the end of the movie, I kind of looked like that emoji where it's got its hands to its face and like its eyes are all like really wide and empty, and like his mouth's all hanging open, like the silent scream emoji. And it really, 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 really freaked me out, like way more than Friday the 13th ever did. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that, and I'm obviously not saying anything in making sort of brilliant observation, but I also had and still do have sleeping problems.
Mhm.
So if you got an issue with insomnia or having, very vivid, let's say, unsettling dreams, this movie is both extremely your shit and extremely not your shit. Because I mean, I'll probably get into this on future episodes. If we want to get a little woo about it, I did at some point learn how to do lucid dreaming, which
Oh, wow.
is a part. It comes into play in the movies in which you kind of sort of take control of what you're doing in your dream, what's happening in it. So I have often made jokes over the years about encountering Freddy Krueger and bringing his hat back and stuff like that, and have a lot of, particularly the first one, I have a lot of attachment to it. It's both close to my heart and also terrifying at the same time.
I was in high school, but here's the my tragic backstory, if you could call it that. Here's a tragic backstory of immense privilege. So all the way through almost the very end of middle school, I was an A-B student. Like I just there wasn't anything that I failed at. I just was perfectly great-ish at everything I was presented with the opportunity to accomplish. And at some point in my puberty, my brain decided, well, I don't give a fuck about learning right now, so I'm not going to pay attention. And that became my new passion, not paying attention. And so I literally almost flunked 8th grade because I gave zero fucks. Because I discovered that there were girls in the world and they were the people I were attracted to. So that's not a great reason to fail school, but it sent my high school career in a very different direction than it would have been elsewise. So over the course of my freshman year, I managed to lose all of my friends. I mean, all of them. They all decided to bail. They pulled parachutes and said, done with this, and sailed off in their own direction. So I had to decide who I was gonna be. And I was also in classes that I had not been in before. I was not in advanced English. I was in, let's think about the rudimentaries of the English language, English.
I was going to say, we were in school at roughly the same time, not the same school, obviously, but at the same grade. I believe the phrase was dummy English.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it went real rudimentary. And so I recovered, not because I suddenly became smarter, but because the bar was set so low that even a very short person like me could just step over it easily. And so I was just kind of friendless, and everyone kind of thought I was a dumb shit because I kind of was. And so I fell in with weird subgroup crowds in the hopes that someone would just take me in and talk to me. And so there was this kid named Jed in this English class. And I saw that he was drawing, various heavy metal things on his trapper keeper.
Did he draw that S symbol?
Yeah. Oh, totally. I learned that S from him.
Did he draw, Slayer laughs as you eventually rot or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, he was one Camaro away from being a classic burnout. I mean, it was really weird. I ended up being in classes with him for half of my day, and I had never met him before. I don't know how we got going on the conversation of like what you like, because at the time we could not have been polar opposites in more ways than was possible. And the only place we intersected was the idea that we both liked horror movies. And he confided in me that if you really like horror movies, you're going to want to watch a movie called A Nightmare on Elm Street. And I'm like, I've heard nothing about this. I read the calendar section every Sunday. What do you mean, A Nightmare on Elm Street? What is this? And he began to tell me what the plot of it was, and that this guy would haunt your dreams. And if you died in your dreams, you would die in real life. And it was so cool. And it was so gory. And it was so gross. And it was so crazy. But really, if you want to be really scared, you watch the second one. So the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie I saw was Freddy's Revenge.
Wow. Okay.
And it scared the living fuck out of me.
Really?
Gena, it really did.
I never found that one that scary. I found it interesting.
Well, this was the lead up. All right. So here's how I got my hands on A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 Freddy's Revenge, because no one was going to rent it to me.
Did you, can I stop and ask you, did you get the text? I can't even call it subtext, but did you get the text at the time?
Well, I will certainly go into this in a greater detail when we actually hit that film. But to me, at the time, a very sheltered Mormon kid, high schooler, who barely knew the touch of a woman, a man, or anything, it read to me as sexuality rather than homosexuality.
Yeah, I mean, I'm messing with you. I mean, when I was probably in my late teens when I saw it, I totally thought he's freaking out because he's starting to feel feelings. I didn't, I didn't get that he was feeling a very specific kind of feeling. And then of course, watching it in retrospect, it's like, oh God, how could I possibly have missed this? But I think that it's definitely one of those movies where at the time nobody really got where they were going with it.
I'm sure it very specifically like an older audience probably very quickly became keen to what it was aiming at. But for me, a kid whose concept of homosexuality was limited to a couple of men I had met also performing the Christmas Carol when I was in the cast of A Christmas Carol, and my mom said, "Oh, John is homosexual."
We'll definitely get to at the time. Like this is one of the things that people who listen to us say they like so much about us, is trying to look at these things from the perspective of when we saw them as teenagers or young adults and looking at them now. I mean, anybody who was our age at the time that came out, no, I would not believe that they said, "Oh yeah, I knew the whole time that's actually what was going on." It's like, no, you didn't. I mean, we had such a poor grasp of what it meant to be gay, and particularly what it meant to be a gay teenager in pop culture of the 80s. I mean, we were only getting to the point, it was barely, past the point where it was a punchline. Yes. So, I mean, I don't buy that anybody who saw that movie at the time it came out got what was actually supposed to be going on with him. Yeah, and it's very much that it wasn't like in retrospect they said, "Oh yeah, no, you're right, he was supposed to be gay." It's like, no, at the time they meant it. It's just nobody really got it because I guess we just weren't ready for it. our little Pac-Man brains weren't ready for it yet.
Well, it's the advantage of not just being something talked about this other person or being whispered about. You see characters who are gay, but that is not the thing about their character that is forefront about them as an individual. They are characters who happen to be gay. Whereas at the time, it was like an issue to be confronted. It was a TV movie of the week to be gay, as opposed to just a thing that people are. It was this, we have to talk about it. But that being said, I do feel the film works on multiple levels. And for me, it entirely read as you're confronting feelings of sexuality. And so that was something that was, driven into me through the church to be afraid of constantly. This was not something to be
that's an interesting
perspective.
In. Okay, I didn't even think of that. So yeah, that makes sense.
So it plays with that sort of, hey, you're feeling this. Isn't it getting hot in here because you're getting closer to hell? It works on me. And the idea of dream imagery, and Jack Shoulder is not a shitty director. Like there are a lot of films that both of us like that are well regarded now. The Hidden and Alone in the Dark from 1980. Like, people like those movies. They're very good. They're not Hitchcock, but he knows what the fuck he's doing. And aside from, him dancing alone in his room and closing drawers with his ass. And then one scene where they try to capture the bird and he explodes. It is not really played for camp for the most part. I was frightened of taking a shower. I was scared of my gym teacher. I had had my clothes taken from me and had to walk around in next to nothing to get my backpack because everyone hated me. So come on. You know what? Here's the deal. Before you say aw, if you met me at the time, you wouldn't have liked me either. I developed a sense of humor and a personality around this. I needed a good punching in the face once in a while to end up here, hopefully a much better person. So that's okay. But it resonated with me. I was able to get my hands on the film because the local 7-Eleven near our school, like any business that just wanted to make some extra coin, was renting videos. And the people behind the counter ranged from, I don't give a fuck who you are, to no way, kid. And if you got them on the right day, you could rent whatever the fuck you wanted to. And so I was able to get my hands on what Jed recommended I try first, Freddy's Revenge. I watched that. It scared me out of my mind, but it also awakened everything that I liked about horror movies. It was gory. There was great makeup. It was outlandish and supernatural, and it wasn't like anything else I was watching. And so I rented the first one, and I immediately was like, I don't think Jed knows what the fuck he's talking about, because that first one's better than the second one. Also, he conflated elements of both movies into one bouillabaisse of a description. So that was my sort of introduction to it. And then I would catch them on video because up until I think 3, I don't remember A Nightmare on Elm Street coming out in theaters. I don't remember Freddy's Revenge coming out in theaters, but I do remember Dream Warriors coming out in theaters. It was a big fucking deal.
Oh yeah. I only saw one of them in the theater. It was the one, regrettably, the 3D one. I believe that is the only one that I have never revisited for good reason. So that's going to be an interesting experience to go back and rewatch that, because all I remember about that movie is Alice Cooper. America's Sweethearts, Tom Arnold and Roseanne Barr. And again, for absolutely no reason, about 15 minutes of it was in 3D.
Because you could. It'll be very... outside of the first one, I have not revisited these films in quite a while. I purchased the DVD box set when it came out from New Line, who were really good at entering the DVD market. They laid on the special features, and there was this extra disc at the back of that box set that was like a choose your own adventure, but with behind the scenes material. And so you would find these Easter eggs with your remote and click on them, and you never knew what you were going to get. One would be like a makeup tutorial from Dream Warriors, and the next would be, here's a music video from Part 5, The Dream Child with Houdini. So I just poured over every inch of that extras disc. I burned myself out on Nightmare on Elm Street. And aside from Becky's mom, Pam, saying, I've never seen A Nightmare on Elm Street. I hear it's scary one Halloween. Why don't we watch it? And then like every scary movie I show her, she's like, I thought it would be scarier. I just don't think you like horror movies, Pam.
Like, what do you want?
What do you want, friend? Like, this crazy, scarred up, slimy demon man.
A guy turns into a blood fountain.
And she's like, it's fine. Yeah, she's always good at popping my personal preference balloons. This last this last year, she's like, well, I don't want to go to the theaters, but I've never seen the original Halloween. What? You show me that. I played it for her. And I'm like, I know this works. Like I've shown it to people in my yard at Halloween, and people jump and they scream, and she watched it. And at the end of it, she's like, I thought it would be scarier. God damn it. What works on you, woman?
It's like you show her Hereditary, and like she's like, why are they serving such a fancy cake at a teen party? That's actually a good question,
everyone so
Pam.
afraid of ants? Come on.
That's a good question, Pam. Why are they serving such a fancy cake at a teen party? Did you ever go to a party as a teenager where they just make some kind of like fancy ass walnut cake?
No.
Did you ever go to any party as a teenager where they served dessert?
Well, I mean, that brings up the other, did I ever go to any parties as a teenager?
Well, that's true too.
Would be very few.
Yeah, I mean, I did not go to any parties that had walnut cake because I did not go to any parties. So
yeah, that's right. The invites were not lost in the mail. No stamps were licked and placed on the invite.
I mean, it's entirely possible that serving walnut cake at teen parties is very much a thing. I just completely
deadly accurate. The most teen parties I went to were the ones I watched in movies. Uncool.
And that's why we're here today.
I don't know that anyone's shouting my coolness from the rooftops as it stands, but that's okay. Being a kid who was condemned to only experiencing the world through movies and television and books paid off later in life when I had to write for movies and TV. Haha, take that, Mom. My mom still does not understand my job.
I feel like this is going to be an emotionally grueling experience. I feel like we're going to work out a lot of teen angst over these next couple of movies.
I mean, unlike Friday the 13th, where as personal as it really got was that I don't like to go camping. The Nightmare on Elm Street series is about teenagers and the feeling of isolation and parents not listening to you and trying to forge your own path against, things that are out of your control. So yeah, I do think it's going to get weirdly confessional because it is the sort of thing that is born out of personal nightmares. And so I would hope that for as many laughs as we might be able to provide, it might also be slightly cathartic.
We're going to show our sensitive sides.
That's right.
I don't know if our listeners are ready for that, but
where are the make-em-ups?
It's time for another session of group therapy on Kill by Kill.
Where every episode ends with them crying.
Daddy!
Oh my God. If you listen to those fucking losers, when are they going to go back to make them yuck 'em ups about Jason's swimming lessons?
Namby-pamby Gen Xers.
Why don't you weep into your Crystal Pepsi?
See, that's the thing. While we're having these tearful confessions about our awful teenage years, we'll still drop the odd 80s pop culture reference, giving the audience what they want.
It's going to be very odd at this because I feel like at a certain point in this movie series, it gets very tied into it being quote unquote cool. Freddy was on MTV.
He had a hotline you could call and listen to him talk to you, which is really weird. I mean, I feel like this is something we should say for later as far as talking about how weird life was for in a different way that's weird now in a less terrible way, but there was a time where you would just call numbers and Santa Claus would talk to you. Corey Haim would talk to you. The New Kids on the Block would talk to you.
Yeah.
And Freddy would talk to you. This child killer who terrorizes teenagers, and you, I guess I never called it. I'm
No.
sure I'm sure if I looked it up on YouTube, somebody probably uploaded, you know,
I'm crossing
the
my
vocals, because
Yeah.
I'll go back and check that later. But I mean, I gotta assume he's just like wisecracking at you and stuff like that. I mean, it's but that just, I'm thinking about that now. I'm like, that's fucking insane. I mean, that's like, you know, I'm trying to think of what's a recent. You know, let's like dial 1-900 Patrick Bateman. You know, it's like, you know, 1-800 payment. You know, I mean, where you know, 1-800 Mother Marcos. You know,
Yeah.
where it's just
Like the Babadook would
Yeah.
just you would just like pop into your mentions
you know,
and start yippee yapping at you.
You just call and like a woman starts screaming at you in a German accent or something. You know, I mean, it's just that's just so insane to me that he became this, you know, kind of super cool hero, and he's a child killer, and it's just such a weird thing, a weird direction that was taken in our tender teen years.
And it will be very interesting because hopefully we'll have a mix of people like we did with Friday the 13th, who are people who were of the era or just beyond it, who are very steeped in knowledge about Nightmare on Elm Street, and people who are coming to it relatively fresh. I would like to have all levels of introduction to it in order to see how different people bounce off of it. Just as we did with Friday the 13th, in the hopes that we learned something new about how people get into this. We'll have some people who are decidedly affected by Nightmare on Elm Street. I think there are people who, I think there are a lot of fans of Friday the 13th, and they like them because they're fun. But I think there's a level of people who like Nightmare on Elm Street that's a little bit different.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you.
I mean, for example, Ashley Blackwell, who from Graveyard Sister, you know, absolutely adores Nightmare above all other franchises. And it's personal to her. And I think there's a level of personal that'll be very interesting to unlock, and talking to people who have never been exposed to it before and might be complete, you know, newbies to the experience, and hear what they have to say so many years later about it. So I'm interested in both. It should be very, very fun.
And if you're looking for us to you know, really just sound, you know, ragey and angry, that's probably not going to happen until we watch the remake, which Patrick's insisting on. So don't blame me.
If we're going to be completists, we kind of have to complete it. I'm not looking forward to it at all, but it's in a bit of a race because I have an immense hatred for the Dream Child. So we'll have to see which I dislike more, Part 5 or the remake. But
yeah, see, the problem with me is I have seen the first 3 several times. And then after a certain point, they all sort of glom together for me.
They're bouillabaisse.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's going to be, I don't even remember if I particularly like them that much. So it's going to be an interesting experience rewatching these and remembering, oh, right, that happened in this one. And yeah, it's just going to be coming all back to me, which will be interesting.
So it'll be a journey of discovery and self-discovery. Tears will be shed. People's outfits will be made fun of. This is not a particularly well costumed endeavor.
And Johnny Depp will be turned into a blood fountain. So that's something we can all enjoy.
Well, I mean, that's the greatest celebration I could think of right now. There's few people. One in particular I could think of that I'd want to turn into a blood fountain more. But him in particular, probably at this point, it would just be red wine and scarves.
And cough syrup.
He may not have blood left.
Just dust, like killing a vampire.
Yeah, this is going to be lamenting the death, not the physical death, the emotional death of Johnny Depp, a very attractive man who turned out to be a complete fucking asshole. Not the first one, not the last. But I tell you, if there's one person who will not be spared in our first journey through Nightmare on Elm Street, it will be Johnny fucking Depp.
Yeah, so if you're a big Johnny Depp fan, maybe
do not tune in.
Maybe skip over until we get into Freddy's Revenge.
Bounce right into revenge because you ain't going to like it. He has it coming, and we are not going to spare him from those details. And so that just about does it for now. But we're only just starting. The body count will continue. So the next time we join you, we'll be talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. If you want to check that out from your personal collection or wherever it might be streaming, this would be a good time to do it. So before we go, of course, you can reach out to us on Twitter and our Facebook group and page. We're on Instagram at Kill by Kill Podcast. If you would like to email us, killbykillpod@gmail.com. And of course, Patreon. Gena, any news on Patreon?
We do. We have 2 new patrons. We have Brennan Klein and Klaxon, alarm, another $10 donor.
Oh my goodness.
Christian Brunn. Thank you, Christian.
Wop wop air horn.
Yep, you get to
DJ Khalid.
You get
action.
You get your hat. You get your name thrown in a hat in probably, God willing, April or so to choose a movie for us.
And if you would like to hear our Patreon exclusive episodes, a really, really good one is coming up.
Yes,
I think
we had a ton of fun with the first of our $10 tier patrons get to choose episode.
We're talking about The Visitor from 1979, a forgotten. And probably it's best that it was forgotten. Italian ripoff.
I don't know.
It's a ripoff of every movie that came out between 1968 and 1979, the year it was made and distributed, where it was quickly put into a vault, probably via lawsuit. It is wild.
It has its own insane charms.
It's very true.
It has a lot of famous actors paying off gambling bets.
If you would like to, if your fetish is watching John Huston look bewildered and walk around like he just injured a hip, you're gonna love this movie. So that just about does it. But don't worry, the body count will continue. So until next time, for myself and for Gena, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.